Hello, good evening. Welcome to ITV News and to Wednesday night's calendar.
Hello, thank you for joining us, and here are tonight's main stories.
Casualties of gang war. We get exclusive access to a project at Leeds General Infirmary where young stab victims are urged to turn their back on street violence.
What's really going on here? Is it normal for a 17-year-old to take a machete to another 16-year-old?
The youngest that we've seen is 11. I've seen people whose arm has been literally taken off, put on a trolley.
You repeat the same pattern over and over again and nothing changes, then they end up coming in with more serious injuries, or in worst case scenario they end up getting killed.
Also on the programme tonight, police scour a lay-by on the A19 near Thirsk after getting a new lead on the honour killing of Rania Aliyah 10 years ago.
It's enough to give you sleepless nights. Pest experts say bedbug infestations are up by 2/3 and things could be set to get worse.
And it was wonderful to be a Whitby fan as the Seasiders made it to round one of the FA Cup for the first time in 20 years. But first tonight, we get to see the pattern of youth violence in Leeds, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. Those were the words of a youth worker who spent the last 2 years dealing with victims of gang crime, many with serious knife and machete wounds, as they're treated in hospital.
Well, we've been given exclusive access to Leeds General Infirmary's major trauma wards, where so-called NHS navigators are tending to children as young as 11 in the hope of guiding them away from further danger.
In the latest part of our investigation into rising youth violence in the face of youth service cuts, our reporter Jonathan Brown followed one navigator in his effort to intervene with what's been dubbed the lost generation.
It's a place where many lives are saved and some are lost. But on this major trauma ward in Leeds, it's not just the medics that are trying to help critically ill patients pull through. Matt's not a doctor, but a youth worker, deployed here because more and more young people are falling victim to violent crime.
No shame in getting help if you need it, do you know what I mean?
His first referral, a man in his 20s, was attacked with a hammer. We've protected his identity because while his injuries are survivable, he fears he could be targeted again.
Consciously realise you're safe, or subconsciously realise you're safe. There's security in the hospital, there's nurses, there's people coming to look after you.
Tell me what that was like.
It's a young man he's been a victim of quite a serious assault, really. At times I thought he was going to get upset, but hopefully it's an opportunity for him to make some changes, I guess.
Matt's part of a team of so-called NHS navigators patrolling these wards every day. Since the service was launched here in February 2021, they've seen more than 1,000 young people. About a fifth of them were stabbed, some assaulted, others criminally exploited.
I don't know if you remember me, I guess you were probably under the influence of quite a lot of pain medication.
The next patient he checks in with is recovering at home. He suffered life-changing injuries in a knife attack that left him permanently disabled earlier this year. But like many of the wounded who come through these doors, he's been attacked once again.
So it's just really to see kind of how things are and whether or not there's any additional support that you might need at the moment.
Leeds General Infirmary was among the first hospitals in the country to launch this emergency youth work pilot scheme after doctors like Najib recognised horrific injuries were becoming increasingly common. It's since been made permanent, the demand ever growing.
You become desensitised to, what's really going on here. Is it normal for a 17-year-old to take a machete to another 16-year-old? The drivers of what causes this deprivation and the lack of safe spaces for young people. They don't have good opportunities for either training or engagement. They don't have role models that they would like to aspire to. And eventually that vulnerability makes them exploited into gangs and they will get injured and unfortunately they end up coming to hospital.
So this in itself isn't a solution to youth violence?
No, not at all. I think we are merely scratching the surface and putting a plaster on what's a bigger problem.
As we film, there are 60 young people on Matt's waiting list.
What are the most common ages?
15, 16, I think.
Does it surprise you the kinds of things that you've come across on the job?
I guess you get to see the kind of pattern of youth violence in Leeds and where it's headed, and at the moment it doesn't seem to be headed anywhere positive. It seems to be getting kind of worse and worse at the moment.
I think you could see this as the last line of support, really. Like you say, these young people have hit rock bottom. Do you feel a weight of responsibility with that?
Yeah, definitely, because obviously if someone's referred to you having been stabbed and you fail for whatever reason to engage with them, and then later down the line you find out that young person's been murdered or a victim of crime again or something like that, then obviously there's a feeling that you've potentially missed an opportunity.
Have you had that feeling then?
Yeah, we've had young people who've been referred to the service numerous times. Yeah, you repeat the same pattern over and over again and nothing changes, then yeah, they end up coming in with more serious injuries, or in worst case scenario they end up getting killed.
In the emergency department, medics and Matt's team are seeing much more of each other.
We'll go and do an assessment with them, and then try and put extra support in place for them when they leave.
It's a service staff here say is as necessary as it is concerning. Amid unprecedented demand on the NHS, on average 5 under-18s who've been attacked are treated here every week. The hope being their time in A&E can be used to direct them towards safety.
I think they are getting younger. The youngest that we've seen is 11. I've seen people whose arm has been literally taken off, put on a trolley, people in need, where there's like slash injuries to knees and arms, and that can be what we call a reachable moment. So I think it's really important for us to use that opportunity, and it might be the only opportunity that young person gets for support.
What would you say to young people?
They all kind of have similar interests and similar things that they're into, but because maybe they're from a different postcode, they're completely opposed to each other. It's just remembering that, like, the young people who you see as being your opposition are just young people like you, and they're just people at the end of the day.
But as things stand, youth violence, if anything, is gaining momentum here. Those calls for common sense coming as clinicians continue to treat victims of the most senseless of crimes. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Leeds.
Well, tomorrow night we'll see the last of Jonathan's reports on the lost generation, taking a look at the charities which say a long-term youth work plan is needed, despite them being given 7-figure government grants. We'll also hear more about what both Labour and the Conservatives plan to do to change things.
Next on calendar tonight, police are searching a lay-by in North Yorkshire after receiving a new lead on the murder of a mother of 3 10 years ago.
Rania Aliad was murdered by her husband Ahmed Al-Khatib in a so-called honour killing. He's currently serving at least 20 years in prison, although her body was never recovered.
Officers are currently scouring a stretch of roadside by the A19 near Thirsk, saying they're still committed to finding Rania so that her family can finally have closure. Fraser Maud has more.
It was in 2013 that 25-year-old Syrian-born mother of 2, Rania Aliad, was murdered by her husband, Ahmed Al-Khatib. She developed relationships here in Thirsk area and in Middlesbrough too, but she'd been lured back to Manchester by Al-Khatib, where he carried out the murder. During his court case, he claimed that he'd acted in self-defence, that Rania had been possessed by an evil spirit and attacked him. The jury believed none of his lies and he was sentenced to murder. After her murder, Rania's body was put into a suitcase and then into a camper van, and with the assistance of his 2 brothers, Mohammed and Hussein, Ahmed Al-Khatib then drove the body to somewhere along the A19 and buried it. In order to throw police off the scent as they were looking for Rania, he even resorted to wearing some of her clothes in order to be captured on CCTV, and told police that he believed she'd returned to either Turkey or Syria. In fact, he'd driven the body in the camper van to the A19 and buried it somewhere along this stretch of road. At the time, police searched 15 miles of this road, but with no success. But since then, they have now returned, following what Greater Manchester Police say is fresh evidence relating to this inquiry. The present search is much more focused, specifically centring on a lay-by here on the A19 just outside Thirsk. Specially trained officers, cadaver dogs and earth-moving equipment are all being used to try and find Rania's body. The Greater Manchester Police say that they will carry out a thorough search whilst at the same time minimising any disruption. Greater Manchester Police go on to say that they remain committed to finding Rania and say that they will follow all available lines of enquiry wherever possible in order to bring some form of closure to her family.
And we'll bring you any updates on this story as soon as we get them. Now, you're watching Calendar. Thanks for being with us. Still to come before 6:30. Experts are warning that the Rugby World Cup could see us having a surge in bedbug infestations across the Yorkshire region. Find out why and what you can do about it a little later.
Weather-wise, a rather stormy, blustery day today, courtesy of Storm Babette, and there's more unsettled weather to endure over the next few days. The full forecast coming up.
Next to the growing pressures facing Yorkshire's local councils, many desperately fighting to balance their books in the face of rising costs and rising demand on their services.
There are stark warnings of cuts to services with things like social care, libraries and leisure centres all in the firing line.
Tonight, Kirklees Council will hear from members of the public and unions who are deeply worried by its cost-cutting plans. Many have been taking part in a demonstration outside the meeting, where Lisa Adlam joined them.
Yes, Lara, well, more and more people have been coming to join what is becoming an increasingly noisy protest as councillors meet inside the town hall. Now, they're worried about proposed cuts, as you say, to leisure centres, children's services, 750 job losses as the council tries to make up a £48 million shortfall. But one of the areas which most people here are worried about are potential closures of care homes, the human faces behind these figures. Two of those who are joining the protest are Colette and Donna. Now, your mum, we can see a picture of your mum on your T-shirts here. She's in one of the care homes that could be closed. What would that mean?
It means for us, we don't know whether Mum would survive a move, to be honest, because her health situation is very unstable. So the bottom line is that Kirklees will have blood on their hands. And I would like to just also add that I'm absolutely outraged by Cathy Scott's comment as she's just passed us. Walking through the door, she actually said to us that what we're doing is disgraceful. Well, how can be standing up for our loved ones who cannot stand up for themselves be classed as disgraceful? And how would she feel if her loved one was in this situation? Would she just roll over and let the closures happen and potentially put her loved one's life at risk? I think that's what the Kirklees councillors need to think about. And they can't say that what we're doing is disgraceful, because we have to make our voices heard.
Colette, you know, the council would say that there's just not enough money to go around, cuts have to be made somewhere. What do you think they should be doing?
Not over profit though. Like Donna's just said, we're not sure my mum would make it if she were to move, and most of the other residents there, the health's going to deteriorate within the first few weeks, and then unfortunately some will pass and it will be on Kirklees' hands.
So what can they do? What action can they ask from government to help them?
They need to demand for more funds. Why should Kirklees Dementia Care be affected? Kirklees do actually have an outstanding dementia care facility, don't they? All the staff are trained perfectly. They should be so proud of that. They should be shouting to other councillors to say, look what we're doing, this is what you should be doing, the same standard.
OK, well, you're clearly not going to go quietly. You're going to let them know how you feel. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Now, Kirklees Council said that at the moment, while these consultations are happening, that it couldn't comment any further. But clearly that £48 million has to be found somewhere. There's some difficult decisions ahead, but people here are not going anywhere quietly.
Lisa in Huddersfield, thank you very much.
Meanwhile, Leeds City Council is warning 730 full-time jobs could go as it struggles with the state of its finances. The authority's executive committee is meeting to discuss ways to save money today, which could include building closures, asset sales and stopping some council services. It's hoped compulsory redundancies can be avoided.
Hopefully, through voluntary measures like people moving to other jobs and not being replaced, or people taking early retirement or leaving voluntarily, we won't have to take compulsory redundancies. But it's a risk that as we reduce our budget to meet our financial obligations, we'll have less staff, and we're working with our trade unions and our services to make sure we can avoid compulsory redundancies where possible.
Since the world's first test tube baby in 1978, millions of babies have been born through assisted reproduction. Many grew up never knowing the identity of their egg or sperm donor if one was used. The donor was always allowed to remain anonymous, but all that is about to change.
Yes, a change in the law means any youngster who turns 18 from now onwards and was conceived using a donor can easily find out who their donor was from the UK fertility regulator. But the information doesn't come without complications, and charities warn that young people and their families will need vital support. Kevin Ashford reports.
Duncan Fisher has no idea who his biological parents are. Both the egg and sperm involved in his conception were donated anonymously. Growing up, Duncan has always known this, but he has no desire to find out who the donors were.
It's because I see my non-biological parents as my parents, so therefore there's sort of no general interest in me finding out who these biological parents are, because the only thing they are to me is essentially my DNA and what has sort of made me me, but I still believe in the argument of nurture over nature far more, so I believe that I am my parents.
While Duncan may have no interest, there's a new generation of young people conceived using donors who will be able to discover their biological origins more easily. A law change in 2005 meant that donors involved in subsequent conceptions were no longer anonymous. In that year, there were 29 donor conception births, babies who are now turning 18 and eligible to find out their donors' identities. And that number will rise year on year. For example, by 2019, the annual number of donor conception births was more than 4,000. This solicitor from Leeds says for those involved, it could be a significant moment.
If they make that request, they'll be provided with the donor's full name, date of birth, and even their last known address. So now that we're 18 years on following that change in the law, we're likely to receive those requests being made, and donors could find themselves being contacted by people that have been conceived using their donations.
The director of a charity that helps families before and after donor conceptions says support is vital, as, for example, a donor may not be interested in having any relationship with the young person involved.
I think we just need to manage the expectations before going forward, that it's an unknown person that you're connecting with, and trying to make sure that there's support available for those meetups or those connections, and then afterwards, if expectations are not met, then making sure that people have a place to go to talk about that.
The Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority says the impact of the anonymity legislation doesn't seem to have put off potential donors.
When the law changed, we did see a little bit of a dip in the number of people coming forward to donation, but that changed and we do have a steady stream of donors now because it's more transparent now, it's more acceptable, and I think donors understand the importance of somebody knowing where they've come from as well.
The HFEA is urging donors to ensure their contact details are up to date so that the young people affected can get the information they're entitled to. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
You're watching Calendar, and the ITV Evening News follows us at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, international outrage after last night's devastating explosion at a hospital in Gaza. Hundreds are dead, many more injured. Both sides are still denying responsibility. The US President Joe Biden has flown in to meet the Israeli Prime Minister, saying he is deeply saddened. We'll look at whether it's really possible to know for sure who was behind the strike. Also ahead, inflation holds steady here, but what does it mean for interest rates and benefits? And the real Wagatha story, Colleen Rooney speaks about the court case that gripped a nation. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks very much, Mary. Now then, are you feeling itchy? Well, if you're not, you will
Not
be
yet.
in a moment, because hospitality businesses in the region are being warned to take precautionary measures against bed bugs, with fears the infestation gripping Paris may be spreading to the UK within weeks as fans return from the Rugby World Cup.
Yes, I hope you're not eating your tea. Even the general public are now being given advice on how to spot the signs of infestation and staying in hotels and B&Bs. But how worried should we really be? Nick Smith reports.
These creepy crawlies have certainly been grabbing headlines in the last few weeks, as one of Europe's most popular tourist destinations battles a city-wide infestation. Even here across the channel, reports of bedbugs in properties has jumped by 2/3 in the last year, according to the British Pest Control Association. Charlotte Freeman recently stayed in a B&B with her partner, but discovered bedbugs crawling all over the sheets, causing them to leave immediately in the middle of the night.
We were lying in bed and I just noticed what I thought was a flea on the bed. Had a look and noticed there was a couple more appearing on the bed sheet. And my partner was like, we need to get out. So we just packed all our bags and we headed off. It was about 1 a.m. and we just drove home. And very tired, a little bit flustered, also a little bit paranoid because we didn't want to bring anything back. The minute we got home, we jumped straight in the shower, just washed everything again. This was like 2 a.m, but just to be safe. It's definitely made us much more observant before we relax into holiday mode.
While bedbug bites do cause some skin irritation, they don't actually spread any serious diseases. What they do create, though, is a sense of anxiety in a property dealing with an infestation. It often involves discarding the affected furniture, which can be pretty costly, and calling in the professional exterminators.
Those like Sophie Thorogood from Knaresborough, who says there are many telltale signs that you have the unwanted guests.
They are quite small. We're talking around 5 to 7 millimetres in length, but they're usually quite round, brown, and kind of resemble an apple seed. So they normally look like that if you find them. Along with adult bedbugs, which are the most obvious sign, you can also see spotting, and this is the bedbug feces.
There are also high-tech detection devices being deployed in the fight against bedbugs. Homes and businesses can install traps like these, using automated systems to identify and alert users if they're present.
Vigilance is key. We have AI algorithms that can identify any insect, and we make a monitor that can go under a bed, in a train carriage, in a hospital, wherever it's needed. It attracts the bedbugs inside it, takes a picture, identifies it, and then sends an email alert.
A statement from UK Hospitality insists the public can feel safe and confident when booking accommodation, as they have not yet seen an indication of problems on the scale observed in Paris. But with travel from France still uninhibited, it may only be a matter of time before these bugs find more footholds on this side of the channel. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Oh, they're
A
lovely,
bit
aren't
itchy
they?
now.
No, they're lovely little things, aren't they?
You know what to look out for now, don't you?
Certainly do.
OK, it's time for some sport. And Arif joins us in the studio. Good evening, Arif. You look a bit warmer tonight.
Much warmer. It's nice in here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much warmer than being outside in Whitby. Now, we've got some concerning news, actually, that one of our players was caught up in the terror attacks in Brussels.
Yeah, that's right, Lara. Rotherham United goalkeeper Victor Johansson was on the bench for Sweden during the Euro 2024 qualifier with Belgium. Now, this was a scene outside the ground as the game was abandoned at half-time after 2 Swedish fans were murdered by a terrorist. Victor and his teammates were safe but kept inside the changing rooms until 4 a.m. for their safety. Rotherham United manager Matt Taylor told me this morning he's spoken to his shaken but fine goalkeeper.
He's obviously been involved in the terrible incident out in Belgium with Sweden, so we're waiting for him to have his passport and his luggage back from Belgium. That was a really difficult situation to be involved in, so fingers crossed he gets back in one piece.
Have you spoken to him?
Yes, spoke to him yesterday. He spoke openly and honestly about what happened the evening of the game. His partner was there as well, so a scary time we can't imagine. We certainly weren't there, so we can't imagine what he was going through, let alone his family and obviously all the ones who are affected by that. So we just hopefully he comes back mentally and physically in the right place.
Did he seem, I mean, obviously something like that you'd be shaken.
Shaken,
but...
yes, yeah, shaken. I suppose inside the stadium was a safe place to be with all the security, but you can't estimate the way he felt at that moment or the way all the Swedish people felt.
Well, Rotherham United say Victor is due back in South Yorkshire this evening with his family, which is of course great news.
It is good news indeed, Arif. And, well, we've mentioned, don't we, that you're in the warmth tonight because last night we had you out in Whitby.
You did.
But it was well worth the trip, wasn't it?
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant as Whitby beat Chelmsford 3-1 at the Turnbull Ground, which sparked these jubilant scenes in the changing room. The players and staff were overjoyed with their win, and rightly so. They'll play Bristol Rovers in the first round, who are just the 4 leagues and 91 places above them in the pyramid. But they weren't the only ones celebrating last night. Scarborough are also in the first round for the first time after beating Oxford City, and York left it late to beat Needham Market 1-0. Scunthorpe United have announced their next 2 home games will be played at Glanford Park. Former owner Peter Swan, who owns the ground, has allowed the Iron to stay as a gesture of goodwill as negotiations continue about a long-term deal. Scunthorpe feared they'd have to leave the ground, which they've called home, for 35 years. And finally from me, Leeds Rhinos say they've put down a marker for next season by signing 2 players from Salford. England's international Andy Ackers and former Man of Steel Brodie Croft have moved to Headingley for a fee believed to be in the region of £300,000. CEO Gary Hetherington says it's the biggest player investment in one swoop since 1997. A good sports news day today.
Thank you very much, Arif. Now, you know,
weather, isn't it?
Kerry was talking, wasn't she, about the storm? Let's go to James Wright.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello there, good evening. Some rather stormy weather on the way, and it sets us up for a bit of an unsettled spell of weather. Storm Barbet joining us right now. Some rather heavy and prolonged spells of wet weather right the way through to the weekend, and rather strong winds, and we've already seen some of that through today. Barbet heading across us this evening. That then sort of merges in with other areas of low pressure, and that's what extends this spell of unsettled weather. In fact, we've got a yellow warning around coastal areas for the wind, courtesy of this next low. It's actually been named by the Portuguese Met Office. Now, as far as tonight goes, then we've got this quite a long spell of rather heavy rain pushing across us, some strong winds mixed in with that. Slowly, that will push to the north of us, leaving us with a bit of a legacy of cloud and murk, and rather mild temperatures, looking at lows of around 11 to 13 Celsius. Tomorrow then, actually not a bad start. A few showers in the mix early on. That's the first pulse moving through. Then hopefully the breeze helping to chop up the cloud a bit. So some bright, even some sunny spells before into the afternoon. We see a few more showers pushing up from the south. These are set to be a little bit heavy and thundery in places. At least there's enough of a breeze to help push them through. That south-southeasterly breeze also drawing in some rather mild air, so we're looking at highs of around 16 or 17 Celsius, a bit of a muggy feel too. And like I say, we're not done with the unsettled weather. This next little system pushing up from the south, some heavy rain on there. We've already got this yellow warning from the Met Office for the strong winds near the coast, also some big waves pushing in because of the direction. And then that same low sticks with us, bringing more showers through Saturday and into Sunday too.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
And that's it, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for watching.